AITA for asking my friend to leave my birthday party because she brought her crying baby. Next time she'll have to find a babysitter if she wants to come to our parties. I 27 female recently threw a birthday party at my apartment, and while I don't usually make a huge deal out of birthdays, this year I really wanted to gather some of my closest friends for a relaxed, fun night. Nothing too crazy, just a low-key get-together with about 10 of us hanging out, playing games, chatting, drinking a little, and eating way too many snacks. I put effort into making sure everyone felt welcome. I cleaned my place top to bottom, picked out drinks and food I knew my friends liked, and even set up a cozy little seating area with pillows and lights. I was genuinely excited to spend time with the people I care about. No one had to dress up or bring anything. The whole vibe was just meant to be easy and fun. The evening started off great. People arrived, we poured drinks, caught up on life, laughed over some dumb meme someone brought up, and a friend even brought a game I had never played before, which got us all pretty into it. The energy was just right. Around 8:30 p.m., Sarah 28 female showed up. Now, I have known Sarah since college. She's a good friend, and I genuinely care about her. She became a mom last year and has a 7-month-old baby girl. I've seen her a few times since the baby was born, but always in more chill, daytime settings, brunches, walks, things like that. So when she showed up to my party, I was surprised to see that she had brought her baby with her. It wasn't like I had said, "No kids," on the invite, but it honestly hadn't even crossed my mind that anyone would bring a baby to what was clearly an adult hangout. The party wasn't wild, but it was evening, there was drinking, music playing, people getting a little loud while laughing or teasing each other over the game, and just general adult chaos. So when I saw Sarah walk in holding the baby in a carrier, my first reaction was confusion. I greeted her with a hug and said hi to the baby, of course, trying to stay welcoming, but I was also trying to figure out what this meant for the rest of the night. Almost immediately after she came in, the baby started crying. Not a little fussy whining either, this was full-on, high-pitched, inconsolable crying. I assumed it was just from the change in environment or being startled, so I didn't think much of it at first. Sarah looked flustered but tried to keep it together. She started bouncing the baby, whispering to her, walking around the living room to soothe her. But the crying didn't stop. It actually got worse. Louder. More urgent. She kept apologizing, telling people that the baby was just overstimulated and would calm down soon. But she didn't calm down. Not for a long time. The crying went on for nearly an hour straight, and the whole energy of the party shifted. People started talking less, and you could feel this tension building in the room. It was like we were all trying to act normal, but no one could ignore the fact that the baby was screaming, and poor Sarah was clearly at her limit trying to juggle it all. I started noticing some of the other guests giving each other looks, and a couple of them eventually slipped into the kitchen to talk quietly. It wasn't like anyone was being mean, but the vibe had totally shifted from carefree fun to awkward chaos. I felt stuck. I didn't want to be the bad guy, but this was my birthday, and it was my apartment. I had worked hard to make it a space where everyone could relax and have fun, and it was clear that wasn't happening. The baby's cries were echoing off the walls, the music had to be turned way down, and people had stopped playing the game. I kept waiting, hoping that the baby would fall asleep or that things would calm down, but when it had been over 45 minutes and nothing changed, I finally pulled Sarah aside. I tried to be gentle. I told her I understood that being a mom was incredibly hard, and I admired her for doing it all on her own tonight, but I also said that it was really difficult to keep the party going with how upset the baby was. I asked if she could maybe step into the guest room with her for a bit or even take a little break outside just to see if the fresh air might help. I wasn't trying to kick her out, I just needed the space to reset. She didn't take it well. Her face dropped, and she told me that I should be more understanding, that she couldn't leave her baby at home, and she was doing her best. She said she thought I, of all people, would get that moms deserve to have a life too, and that she had hoped she could still be part of things even with the baby. I tried to explain that I wasn't mad and that it wasn't about her being a mom, it was just that the crying had taken over the entire night and none of us were able to really connect or enjoy ourselves anymore. She didn't say much after that. She looked embarrassed and angry, and she packed up her things and left quietly while everyone else kind of avoided eye contact. The room stayed quiet for a while afterward. People eventually started chatting again, and the night recovered a little, but the whole situation lingered in the back of my mind. I kept replaying it and wondering if I could have handled it better. A few of my friends said they were relieved I said something because they didn't know how much longer they could take the crying, and one friend even said they were about to leave early because it was stressing them out so much. But another friend messaged me the next day and said she thought I was out of line. That Sarah was probably desperate for a night out, and that it wasn't fair to shame a single mom who was just trying to see her friends. She said I could have been more accommodating or just waited it out a little longer. Now Sarah isn't speaking to me. She hasn't replied to my messages, and I feel this weight of guilt mixed with frustration. I get that parenting is hard, I really do. And I love her and her baby. But I also feel like there's a time and place for everything, and an adult evening party where people are drinking and letting loose isn't necessarily the best environment for a baby, especially one who isn't settling. So now I'm just left wondering, was I completely selfish for saying something and protecting the vibe of my birthday party? Or was I just setting a boundary in my own space and trying to make sure the night didn't get derailed for everyone else? Am I the asshole? Update 1. About 2 weeks after the birthday party incident, I found myself still thinking about how things had ended with Sarah. I wasn't angry anymore, just kind of sad. We had been close for years, and while I still stood by the decision I made that night, I also missed her. I missed our conversations, her sharp sense of humor, the way she always noticed when something was off and checked in without being overbearing. The silence between us felt heavier than I expected it to, like a piece of something good had quietly fallen away. I didn't want our friendship to end over one uncomfortable night. So when I decided to host another small gathering, I thought it might be a good opportunity to reconnect. This time, the vibe was completely different. It was going to be a wine and cheese night, soft jazz playing, low lighting with candles flickering on the coffee table, platters of brie and sharp cheddar and fig jam, and the kind of mellow conversation that happens when people settle in and take their time. The whole thing was meant to be gentle and low stress. No games, no crowd, no big energy. Just 6 or 7 of us, sipping wine, catching up, sharing music recs or weird dream stories or whatever else came up naturally. It felt like a safe space, one where things could go differently. At first, I hesitated to invite Sarah. Part of me worried she wouldn't want to come anyway. Part of me was nervous that things would just get weird again. But I told myself this wasn't a party, it was a hangout. And if we were going to move forward as friends, we needed to have some kind of restart. A quieter night might actually be easier for her too, something more manageable. So I sent her a message. I was polite, not overly emotional, just a simple invitation, having some wine, come by if you're free, would love to see you. When she responded with a yes, I felt a wave of cautious hope. I told myself that things could be different this time. The night arrived, and everything was going smoothly. People arrived with bottles of Merlot and Sauvignon Blanc tucked under their arms, compliments on the cheese board started flowing almost as quickly as the wine, and that warm, cozy vibe I'd envisioned began to take shape. We were about 20 minutes in, everyone finding a seat or spot to lean with their glass in hand, when the elevator dinged and I heard the unmistakable sound of wheels rolling across the hallway floor. Sarah showed up. With the baby. This time, instead of a carrier, she had her daughter in a stroller, bundled up in soft blankets, a tiny pacifier clipped to her onesie. It was around 7:30 in the evening, again, well past the point in the day when most babies start getting fussy and overtired. I hadn't said, "No kids," explicitly on the invitation, but after how things had gone last time, I truly thought the unspoken boundary had been understood. I stood at the door for a beat longer than usual when I saw her, but I forced a smile and let her in. I didn't want to start the night off with tension. I told myself it was fine. Just one baby. Maybe things would be okay. The energy in the room shifted slightly the moment they entered. It was subtle, but I noticed it. People adjusted their posture, some gave small smiles in Sarah's direction, others just looked at their wine or each other. The music played on, and conversation continued, but I felt the shared awareness ripple through the room. Still, everyone tried. We made space for the stroller near the couch. Someone offered Sarah a glass of wine, which she declined, and she settled in like nothing was unusual. For the first 10 or 15 minutes, it was fine. The baby was quiet, just blinking up at the ceiling, and Sarah was chatting with a friend about a new book she had been trying to get through. I was in the kitchen replenishing crackers and olives when I heard it start, a soft whimper at first, that unmistakable sharpness creeping into the sound. I paused and listened. The baby fussed for a few seconds, then stopped. I exhaled. Then came the second wave. A longer cry, louder this time, followed by a hiccuping wail. Then it just escalated. It was exactly like last time. The baby was crying at full volume, red-faced and inconsolable within minutes. Sarah began her routine, rocking the stroller, making soft shushing noises, fiddling with the pacifier, trying to keep her calm. Nothing worked. The soft jazz music was completely overpowered, and conversation quickly faded as everyone tried to navigate the rising discomfort. People began whispering behind their wine glasses. One guest leaned toward another and I caught the words, "Not again," mouthed silently, followed by a quick look in my direction. A couple of my friends, who had been comfortably settled in the living room, slowly got up and moved to the balcony, plates in hand. Someone else began repouring drinks with an overly cheerful tone, like they were trying to fill the space with something other than the sound of a crying baby. It wasn't hostile. No one said anything cruel. But the atmosphere had shifted completely. It wasn't the relaxed, candlelit night I had planned. It was something else, tight, careful, uneasy. I froze. I wanted to do something, but I didn't have it in me this time. I didn't want to go through another emotional conversation. I didn't want to pull Sarah aside again and try to find the right words without making her feel judged. I didn't want to draw attention to the fact that everyone was pretending not to be frustrated. So I stayed quiet. I busied myself in the kitchen, stacking crackers, wiping down the counter unnecessarily, listening to the crying continue and the tension simmer. Eventually, Sarah seemed to get the hint. People had gradually migrated away from the living room, the space she and the baby occupied, and the conversation outside on the balcony was growing louder and more relaxed again, while inside the crying echoed against the walls. She stayed seated for a little while longer, eyes fixed on the baby, not looking at anyone. Then she slowly stood up, packed her things back into the diaper bag, adjusted the blanket around the stroller, and quietly said goodbye without looking directly at me. She left early again, eyes avoiding mine. Update 2. Fast forward a few more weeks. Life had settled into a quieter rhythm again. I hadn't seen or spoken to Sarah since the wine and cheese night, and while I still felt a twinge of guilt about how everything had played out, I also felt tired. The last 2 attempts to include her in low-key social gatherings had ended in that same pattern, her bringing the baby getting overwhelmed, the atmosphere unraveling, and Sarah leaving early, upset. It felt like walking through a minefield with no map. I missed my friend, but I didn't know how to be around her anymore, and I think most of us were quietly starting to feel the same. Then our mutual friend Emily decided to throw a spring-themed rooftop party. She had recently moved into a new apartment complex with a rooftop lounge area, and she was excited to break it in with a big gathering. The plan was casual but festive: string lights, floral-themed outfits, a cocktail station, and finger foods. The kind of event where you can hear music thumping through the floor and feel the breeze on your skin while holding a drink in one hand and a paper plate in the other. It was meant to be fun, grown-up, carefree. One of those rare nights where people actually look forward to being social again instead of mentally bracing for it. Emily created a group chat to start organizing. It was a mix of familiar faces, friends from college, co-workers she had grown close to, a couple of partners tagging along. She asked everyone to RSVP, tossed in a Pinterest mood board of pastel aesthetics and floral drinks, and it instantly felt like something to get excited about. The messages came in quickly, people asking what to bring, joking about who was most likely to spike the punch, sharing memes about rooftop party fashion fails. For the first time in a while, it felt like we were all syncing up on something light and happy. Then, Sarah replied. Her message was simple: "Can't wait, count me in." And just like that, the chat froze. The cheerful momentum hit a wall. For a long moment, no one said anything. It wasn't outright hostile, no one was angry, but it was like everyone had silently remembered what had happened the last 2 times. It hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. A few people who had been actively chatting suddenly went quiet. The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared. No one knew what to say. Then someone broke the silence. It wasn't me. Another friend, Lauren, finally typed, just to check, are you planning to bring your daughter this time? The message came across neutral, but the question itself wasn't. It was direct, and the intent behind it was unmistakable. There was a brief pause, and then Sarah replied, well, yeah, unless you guys are saying I'm not welcome with her. And that's when the tension really cracked open. Josh, one of the more level-headed people in our group, stepped in. He wrote, we love you, Sarah, but this is an adults-only night. It's late, there'll be loud music. Maybe it's a good idea to get a sitter this time. Again, it was measured, not unkind, but the implication was clear. Everyone had been thinking it, Josh just had the nerve to say it out loud. Sarah's response came quickly. Her tone flipped from cheerful to sharp in an instant. She said it felt like she was being excluded, like people were punishing her for being a mom. She said she had always tried to stay connected to the group, to not disappear just because she had a child, and it hurt that her friends couldn't just roll with it. She said she never expected special treatment, but she also didn't want to be treated like an inconvenience. The message was long, emotional, and left no room for doubt about how upset she was. After that, the group chat turned into a slow-motion train wreck. A few people tried to suit the situation, sending messages like, we love you, and, you're always welcome, but they were walking a tightrope. No one wanted to flat out say, please don't bring the baby, even though it was clear that's what everyone meant. The conversation stalled. Some people stopped responding altogether. Others defaulted to logistical questions to change the subject, asking about parking, drink preferences, the weather. But that core conflict had already fractured the easygoing vibe. Sarah didn't reply again. No reaction, no clarification, no follow-up. She read the messages, because we could see the seen notification on her name, but she didn't say another word. And with every hour that passed, the awkwardness in the chat deepened. People started planning the party again, but there was this underlying tension running through it now. Like we were all stepping carefully around a bruise. No one was sure if she'd come at all. Update 3. The night of the rooftop party arrived with that kind of cinematic perfection that you almost don't trust. The sun had just dipped behind the skyline, painting everything in hues of dusky pink and warm gold. The air was crisp but not cold, the kind that makes you want to stay out longer just to feel a little more alive. Emily had gone all out. String lights crisscrossed overhead, soft and twinkling like stars we never see in the city. Floral centerpieces decorated the high-top tables, mismatched candles flickered gently in their holders, and a playlist of indie pop and mellow throwbacks pulsed from a Bluetooth speaker tucked discreetly near the bar cart. It was the kind of setting where everyone looked a little better than usual under the warm glow, drinks tasted sweeter, and conversations just flowed. People arrived in clusters, dressed in pastels and floral prints, sunglasses perched on heads, and spring energy in full swing. Someone brought a tray of sangria, another passed around homemade lemon bars. We mingled, laughed, took too many photos, and drifted into little corners of conversation before regrouping and reshuffling again. Everything felt easy, like the tension that had been lingering for weeks had finally lifted just enough to let joy in again. We were about halfway through a particularly chaotic round of charades when it happened. Someone was in the middle of a wildly inaccurate attempt to act out The Devil Wears Prada, using only dramatic hair flips and imaginary heels when the elevator dinged. It was just loud enough to cut through the laughter and music. Heads turned instinctively. For a split second, no one said anything. And then we saw her. Sarah. Alone. She stepped out of the elevator wearing a pale blue dress and a denim jacket, her hair pulled back in a low, effortless bun. There was no stroller, no baby carrier, no diaper bag slung over one shoulder. Just her. She stood still for a moment, clearly aware that she had become the center of attention. But not in the way she had before, not in that awkward, why is there a baby crying at a wine night, kind of way. This was different. People paused mid-sentence, mid-sip, mid-motion. Even the charades mime froze with one hand dramatically on their hip. And then Josh, the same one who had gently but firmly laid down the adults-only message in the group chat, asked the question we were all thinking. He asked where her little one was. Sarah gave a small, sheepish smile and said she had gotten a babysitter. She said she figured she owed us a night where no one had to shout over baby cries. And then she apologized, not in a dramatic, tearful way, but with that quiet kind of sincerity that lands harder than any speech. She said she didn't realize how much she had been forcing her new life into old spaces, and that she hadn't meant to make anyone feel like they had to choose between being supportive and being comfortable. There was a beat of silence. A soft kind. The kind that happens when the temperature of the room shifts, but in a good way. Then someone handed her a drink, and another person reached out, pulling her into the circle. A new round of charades started, and Sarah was back. Not as the mom with the crying baby, or the one we're all trying not to upset, but just as Sarah. Our friend. The night unfolded with a sort of ease that had been missing for a while. Sarah laughed harder than I'd seen her laugh in months. She talked about a documentary she'd been obsessed with, debated over the correct ranking of 90s rom-coms, teased Josh for his tragically bad acting in charades, and helped someone hunt down a bottle opener that had mysteriously vanished. At one point, she and I stood near the railing, looking out over the city lights, and there was this unspoken peace between us. No need to revisit the past, no need to dissect everything that had gone wrong. We were just here again, on the same page for the first time in a long time. It wasn't about erasing what had happened. It was about something quieter. The kind of reconciliation that doesn't require grand gestures or hours of rehashing emotions. Just showing up. Choosing to adapt. Understanding that no one had meant harm, that everyone had been trying their best with the tools they had in the moment. We were all just people figuring out how to stay connected through the messy middle. That night, something realigned. The group, the mood, the friendship. It felt like we had reached the other side of something. A place where we could hold space for each other's changing lives without losing what we had always been.